Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Thursday and welcome back to moi and Dr. Dennis. We're going to be talking about zombie clones and robots. There's a lot of that going on right now, I do believe. Robots, zombies, clones. But before we do, I want to just pop the schedule up quickly. So we can just see what's happening this week on ARA as well as solutions. Guys, also what's not on here is Sunday night show with JR Sweet. If you guys didn't catch, that's my third interview with him. Wow, what a testimony. It's almost 2.5 hours long. But really, that is such an incredible testimony. He was trained to be a CIA assassin, and what went along with that. Truly heartbreaking, actually. Anyway, Monday we had Miles Johnston, the cray-cray Irishman. Very informative, has a lot of information on what's going on out there as well as around this globe for sure. And then, of course, if you guys haven't caught the 3-hour bee sounds yet, please do so on Solutions with Shanti. It's a friend of mine. He has a wild beehive, wild bees that have made a nest at his home. And he recorded their sounds, and we've created that into a 3-hour hum. It's amazing. Bees are the most incredible, bee sounds are the most incredible healing energies. So if you haven't caught any of the series on Solutions with Shanti yet, do so. Very interesting and very necessary for where we're at now. And then, of course, yesterday, Double Trouble with Jessie, we did the decode on the Oscars, both shows. Absolutely fascinating what's going on. And of course, Jessie always has, sorry, not both shows, the first show. The second show was on the popes and their shenanigans. So catch those if you haven't already. Today, earlier on, I was again on Solutions, and we spoke about you don't have a money block. It's a protective pattern. So very interesting when we understand how bringing ourselves into alignment, we don't have to manifest anything. We just absolutely go back to our original resonance and frequency, and things just fall into place, right? And then, of course, Dr. Dennis, we're talking about zombies and all sorts of cray-cray things as well. Tomorrow, yes, it is Easter Friday, but for those of you who are around, I will be doing, again, the sequel to The Fall of the Cabal. I think we also, I can't remember exactly what episodes are on tomorrow, but we were talking again about the Bill Gates thing and the depopulation agenda. Very freaky when we see what's been going on behind the scenes, not just with the pandemic vaccines, right? But how they've literally been bioengineering these jabs that they give us from birth and literally using third world countries, special needs children, mothers in prison, babies born from mothers in prison. It's absolutely freaking shocking. We should be so pissed off, and I am, that we never ever allow that shit in our bodies or in our kids' bodies ever again. Very annoying. Anyway, then of course, Leo Zagami, and we're going to be talking about, oops, I can't remember. He did give it to me this afternoon. But yeah, Leo was supposed to be on last week, but he'll be on with us tomorrow again, Easter Friday. So I hope you guys that are here are going to be joining us. And then, of course, on Easter Sunday, yes, book club with Jessie, and that's at 4 o'clock South African time. And then at 6 o'clock, same time as now, we have the Sunday loop where we are playing reruns. And I do believe it's going to be one of Jessie's and one of Caleb Jade's as well. So tune in for that. Ha! I'm exhausted after that. Hello, everybody. Who's in the chat? Kerry, Leanne, nice to see you guys. And without any further ado, ta-da, Dr. Dennis, so good to see you. How are you?
All right. That's what I always say when I start my podcast. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you may be, wherever
In
you're
the
at in the
beautiful
world.
world. Yes, wherever
Yeah,
you are in the
I cover.
beautiful world.
I try to get I try to get everything covered on that one, definitely. But I was just looking at your schedule. You have a full itinerary. You keep busy, definitely. But you got some very
Yeah, yeah.
interesting shows coming up. I did a good show last night on hunting the shadows. That I would invite everybody to go watch. They might check out my channel. I did a show on the legends of the white gods. You know, all over the world, you have these legends of the white gods that showed up and showed different indigenous peoples how to found civilizations and all that. I mean, from
When you talk
China
about
to
the
South
white god,
America.
okay,
Yeah, it's
okay, explain the white gods.
yeah. Well, I'll have to. Yeah, they're all the white gods. They actually are white. And we'll do a show on that one day, you and I will, because that is a fascinating. It's a very big mystery of history. What's going on with that, and why it pops up all over the world. And you've got some really, Chantelle, you've got some really freaky stuff going on in the world today, and we need to. That's what the show is going to be about today. Zombie clones and robots. What is a zombie clone? Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with that. Now, you know what a zombie is, you know what a clone is, but what if you put them together? You got zombie clones. Okay, we're going to talk about that a
The,
little bit today and some robots and stuff like that because um, there are some very strange interactions in social norms going on now. We're seeing some very strange activity going on. Those people like me, we kind of keep an eye, kind of keep our finger on the pulse of the paranormal, you know. And whenever these things crop up, and very similar to that, you might remember a good many years back with the clowns that were being seen everywhere. These evil looking clowns. Remember that? You have these things pop up like that every now and then all over the world in different places. And is it, you know, a lot of people, when you get into anthropology and you start talking about, you know, anthropology is basically the study of the human race, and there is nothing more fascinating on this planet, my friends, than the human race. Okay, uh, but
right.
is this a psychological thing going on, or is this really supernatural? You know, or something out of the normal? I gotta define something right quick for everybody watching today. The two words supernatural and paranormal are used interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. Okay, we got to understand that paranormal means slightly above the normal or out of the normal range. Supernatural means way above that. It means way out beyond the paranormal. So you've got both factors going on in the world. You know, when you see something weird that happens, you stop and say, "Oh God, you know, that was strange. What was that?" You know, and so you begin, and when it comes to people like us, we kind of got to investigate it. Okay, that's what we are. We're born to be investigators. I think you are too. We were born to
Mm.
do it. You know, look into these things. Yeah, I mean, it's just part of our makeup. You know, um, but it's very strange. So I'm going to begin today's show with a very famous quote from one of my favorite writers, C.S. Lewis. And he said something very interesting, I think, that we all need to think about today. And this is what he said: if you ever meet something that once was human but is no longer human, or something that looks human but is not, then you need to keep your hand on your hatchet. So what he's saying here is you need to be very careful in the world, definitely, because a lot of things are not what they appear to be. So we're getting a lot of reports now of people doing some very strange things, acting like robots in certain
Hmm.
circumstances. I know you've heard about this, and a lot of people heard about this. What's going on with that? And there's a lot of supposition on it because we think, without a doubt, there's some smoke from the government in this. So where there's smoke, there's a fire, definitely. And we think the government is involved in a lot of this. And we do know that they like to experiment a lot on stuff. You know, they like to. And the best sounding board for experimentation is in the social sector. Okay. If you're going to experiment with robotics or cloning techniques or zombie clones, as we call them, whatever that, you're going to experiment with it in the social norms. You're going to put it out in public and say, hey, let's see what happens. Let's see if people notice this, you know. This is what they do, okay? Because we have found over the years a lot of secret government installations under things like Walmart and shopping centers and places like that. Why are they there? Why, you know, you would think they would go way out in a desert somewhere or in the jungle somewhere and do that. No, no, no. They need to experiment with us. That's what it's all about. And we are the guinea pigs, whether we realize it or not. That's what they're doing with us. And it makes sense when you think about it. You know, if you're going to test out something, you got to put it into public and see what happens. And it makes sense. And I think that may be what's going on here with some of this stuff. Okay. And that made me kind of suspicious. Hey, you know, the government's definitely got a hand in something like this, without a doubt, because it's not just a social experiment. It is weaponization, and they are very good at weaponizing things, okay? They have now got robot dogs equipped with guns to come after you if they want to. And these robot dogs, you can't stop them. You could stop a regular animal dog, okay, but you're not going to stop these guys because they're robots. They're not living things. They are machines. And if they've got that, what else have they got? And, you know, I've always said this, Shanty, and it's very true. Whatever technology we have is 100 years behind what the government already has, because they're not releasing that technology to us because that's part of their power. You hear that a lot today. You're saying, oh, you know, disclosure this, they're going to disclose that. This does no. That's not going. They're not going to share their power with us because secrecy is their power. That's part of their power. They're not going to share that with us. Here's what they do. Okay, and I was talking about this the other night. They use deception to deceive you. I know this sounds weird, but they use deception to deceive you. In other words, they will deceive you with something that is not real to hide the real truth from you of something that really is there, okay? It's the old smoke and mirrors thing. It's like the magician says, watch this hand while he's doing something with this hand over here. That's just the way they're doing it, and they're experts at that, okay? They know how to do that very well. And they keep us bamboozled. That's a good old word there, bamboozled. You don't hear that much anymore. But they keep us bamboozled with this. And they keep us dumbed down. And they're getting this over on this because they know they can get away with it. Okay. They're getting away with it. And who's stopping them? You know? That's just the power that they have in this. So if they want to put robots out in the public and see what happens, you know they're doing it. And I think that's what you're seeing here with a lot of this stuff. Just like, you know, you see people at McDonald's doing weird stuff. They're doing strange things. They start talking to strange. Are they human? You got to that's the question. Are they really human beings or something else here? You know? Now, let me define what a true zombie clone is, okay? Zombie clone is if I wanted to actually control something, I can make it look like you, and it may be sort of like your clone, but it's not really human, but it looks like you. So it's your replacement, okay? I can replace you and fool your best friends into saying, hey, that's Chantelle there. You don't know it's not. It just looks like her. It's her zombie clone, okay? And I could send you out and do things. And this is dangerous, though, when you think about the social norms of this, okay? This is not just having fun and fooling around and trying to trick people into something. That's not what this is about. This is weaponization of a high level. Because if you can replace people, my friend, Who is going to be subject to that? Anybody could be replaced. That's the most dangerous aspect of all this. And it's very much like that great old movie, that old science fiction movie, you know, about the invasion of the pod people. You know, they replaced everybody with aliens that look like you, but they're not. And the only reason you could tell them, and here, listen to this very closely, the only reason you can tell the difference in this is they have no human capacity for emotion. There's no emotional thing going on there. So if we were to see your zombie clone, it may look like you, it may talk like you, it may walk like you, but it may not act like you. It may not have emotions. Why? Because it doesn't have a what? Soul. Like a human being, okay? Human beings have souls. However you want to define that. Human beings, that's what makes them human beings, okay? That's what makes all living things living. Even animals have a soul. We know that. They have a spiritual aspect to them. I even think certain plants may have that, you know? All living matter has a capacity to have a spiritual aspect to it, okay? I don't know about a rock. Rocks are not living, but yet they are organic in certain ways, okay? Yeah.
Everything carries a consciousness, and anything that lives, like an animal or a human that has a mammal type thing, right? They would have souls.
Animals
would be
have a consciousness, without a doubt.
Animals have souls.
Yeah.
They definitely have souls. But trees, for example, nature, you know, plants and things would have a spirit. We have a spirit and a soul. To incarnate, we need a soul, but we are connected to the divine spirit.
The soul would be directly connected to the consciousness, because consciousness is your being. And, you know, animals have a consciousness too, but it may be driven by instinct to a certain degree, you know, like a bird has an instinct to build a nest or to take care of their young and all that. That's built in. That's the thing that's built into that. But it's still part of their consciousness. Yes. Okay.
Totally.
That's what makes us human too. Yeah. Yeah. We have a consciousness. We have a soul, and they're connected. They're probably, if you want to look at it that way, that's one and the same thing, really. They're not really segmented. They're really one and the same. You couldn't have one without the other. Let's put it that way. Okay. I don't think you could have one without the other. So there you go. But you don't have that with zombie clones and robots. They don't have that. They can be downloaded in them. It can be programmed into them. It can be indoctrinated into them, but it's still not the real thing. Like you and I have, Steve, because we were born with it. We were made that way. You could say our creator designed us that way. Okay. But when we create something like that, we do not have the capacity to do it. Right. Yeah, there you go. So that's what you get into.
It's completely manipulated. It's completely manipulated for self-gain. When we as humans start tampering with DNA, cloning, splicing, stuff like that, because that's exactly what they do, you know. And then, it's like then they would, isn't that when they also connect the lower vibrating souls or entities, rather, to these bodies as well?
But we cannot recreate it. That's the thing about it. We cannot recreate it like that. And here's the thing about it. If I wanted to let my zombie clone have something very much like a consciousness or soul, I would put it out in public and say, okay, go ahead, learn how to be human. Okay, learn how to be human. Yeah, but they're still never going to reach that limit. They're not going to reach that goal no matter what, because they're not human. That's just it.
Yeah.
And just like I said with that quote at the beginning of the show, if it, looks human, does not necessarily mean it is human. Okay. Looks can be deceiving, especially when it comes to a thing like so. So one of these zombie clones, that's probably why they're put out in public, because they're put out there to learn to try to act more like human beings. I'm going to tell you something. Now, I have run in on several occasions. I have run into what I call beings that looked human, but they were definitely not human. They were not human at all. And you could just tell that, whenever you get that feeling, I've had people ask me that over the years, Dennis, how do I know when I'm running into something like that? That this dark and evil, or this soulless or whatever. I say, you'll feel it. You'll know it. You'll know it without really knowing it, but you'll know it. And you need to recognize that when that red flag goes up, you need to say, hey, what's going on here? So why am I getting this feeling off of this? You need to investigate that. Yeah, it's in the eyes. It's in the very manner of the way they use. It can be the way they talk. I have actually heard them talk. They sound more like it's not a human sound to it. It's not even animal-like. It's a weird kind of a concoction between both, you might say, but neither one of the other. And that's the weird thing about it. You pick up the vibes on it. That's what you're saying here. You pick up these vibes. And when you pick up these bad vibes, you need to say, hey, what's going on with this? What am I dealing with here? Because it's not what I'm supposed to be, facing here, or what the consequences are for it. You need to become an investigator and say, hey, what's going on? Why are you like that, or what's that? And I have actually had people come to me and tell me, say, they see someone in the store or something, they said, that person's not human. That's not a real person. And all of a sudden, hey, there's something really going on freaky with this thing here that I'm looking at. It's not a real person. And it really bothers people when this happens. And I don't see why not. Yeah, because it's something very out of the normal. And it's something that's very discerning to you, that you run into something like that. And it bothers you, definitely, because it is something that really is attacking you on a spiritual level in a way, and that's the way it is. And here's the weird thing about it. If it's something that does not have a spirit or soul to it, you immediately know that, because I've had people say, I deal with humans every day, I'm around humans all the time, and I know when they're not a human being. Okay. I know when it's not a person. Without a doubt, because we are used to, I think, sharing not only emotions with each other and communicating and rapport with each other, but I think our consciousnesses are touching each other. There's sort of an interconnectedness going on here. And when that is violated and something goes wrong with that, that's when the red flags show up. That's when things say, hey, that gives me a very unsettled feeling. I've actually felt that. I'm not saying it's scary and it's frightening, but it's like, it just does, it's a very uneasy feeling, that you say, hey, this is not right. This is wrong on all many different levels here. It's very wrong. So when you encounter something like that, you need to really, try to figure out what's going on. You need to watch. You need to be very, like C.S. Lewis said, keep your hand on your hatchet. You need to be ready for whatever may come down the line in this situation, because you're not dealing with human beings. And, I've talked about this for many years, about like the demon entities that we've talked about and stuff like that. They have never walked this world actually as human beings. They're not human. They're not remotely human. Okay. And when you deal with something like that, you got to be very cautious. You got to be very careful, because it is a very dangerous situation. Whether it doesn't look like it or not, it still is spiritually to you. Okay. It can really spiritually screw you up if you're not careful. And that's when you got to get on guard. I've talked about this before, I think, on different shows. You have a built-in spiritual barrier like around you. That's your personal space. Even animals have that, okay? And it's a good idea never to get in a bear's personal space, okay, or a lion. It might not come out good, okay. It might not work for you, but they have a personal space too. And when somebody or something gets in your personal space, things get kind of weird. Okay, things get, you get an uneasy feeling. I know you've been in that situation where somebody comes up, maybe somebody's a touchy-feely person. They put their hands on you and they're doing this, and you're saying, "I wish you wouldn't do that." It bothers you, and there's a reason why it's bothering you, because I think you've got a spiritual barrier here. And that's the way you're made. Even animals made, like we said a few minutes ago, animals have spirits too. I know that without a doubt. Yeah. They've got that barrier too. Okay. Because that's part of the equipment you get with a spirit. Okay. When you have a spiritual aspect to you, I think you get that. So when something violates that, when something gets in your personal space, you should be going into what I call danger mode. You be saying, "Hey, there's something bad here going on. I gotta watch myself." You need to pay attention to that, because that's the way you're made. That's the way you're built. We talk about women having intuition. Okay, and that's very true. Women do have they were equipped with that. Why? Because they had to take care of the young in the wild. Okay, they needed that. They had to have that part of their survival makeup. Okay. And have you ever been in a situation where somebody's watching you and you feel it? You don't see it, you just feel it, This is that intuition kicking in, okay? This is that spiritual aspect of you that's going, ding, ding, there's something going on here, And you need to pay attention to that. You're in a danger zone. And it can be not only, and that's the point I want to make right now, it's not only physical danger, but spiritual danger. And both of them are deadly to you. Both of them can very badly affect you adversely in many ways. Yeah. So you need to be very careful how you handle this kind of a thing. But so you need to be very careful who you let inside that barrier. Okay. And at what time, because there may be some bad people out there that you don't want in that barrier. They may do some bad stuff to you. Let me tell you real quick. The number one way to put a curse on somebody, okay, witchcraft curse, I would speak the curse into my hand and then touch you with it. And now it's yours. That's the way they do it, okay? You will see this accomplished in magic and sorcery all over the world. This is not just one little certain aspect of the world. This is a big thing in sorcery, okay? And by the way, there's not a whole big difference, my friends, between sorcery and technology. It's all on your point of view, okay? But that's what's going on here. So our government is not only engaging in dark technology, but it is a sorcery to itself. It is something very much I call dark alchemy. It's not designed to be good. It's designed for bad things. And we got to understand that. And there are people out there operating in that way too. We call them evil people. They're agents of evil. That's what they are. And they want to screw you up. And and a lot of times they're drunk on the power of it. They love it. Aleister Crowley used to joke about that. Aleister Crowley said he could walk behind people and trip them up with his mind. And he thought that was hilarious. He thought that was funny, He said one time he had an old woman trip, and I think I heard her hip crack when she hit the ground. He thought that was hilarious. Because he was drunk on the power of it. He thought that was something fun, great. It empowers these people in a dark way, not a good way. Well, you can empower yourself in a good way to do good things and heal and all that, but you can also empower yourself in a bad way. You're not careful, and you got to understand how that goes. But power is the most addictive thing in this universe. Okay, it can twist people. It can turn them in different ways, bad ways, or it can do good too. Of course, it depends on the person. Yeah, but there are malefactors out there. People who wish you harm, without a doubt, because that's just the way they're, and it can be because they might just, maybe they hate you, or maybe they're jealous of you, or there's just something about you they don't like. So they want to screw you up, and that makes them feel better because they think, hey, I got it over on them, I'm smarter than they are, and I got more power than they got. It's an ego trip more, They love it. And they get stuck on this kind of stuff. And this is what is the makeup of these evil people that do these things. There's a lot of it. That's their motivation a lot of times, to do that. But we got to be very careful because this is a real factor in the world in which we exist. As a doctor of metaphysics, I have studied the unseen aspects of this universe. And I know without a doubt, the unseen can very, very much affect the seen aspects and vice versa. That's the way we got to understand that the universe we live in has many different aspects we cannot see. But guess what? We're built to feel it. So if you come up on a robot clone, like we're talking about, a zombie clone, and you feel something is not right here, you need to say, hey, I need to deal with this in a correct way, or very careful. I need to walk very carefully with this and see what's going on. But they know that we may suspicion these things and why they put these things out in public, okay? To see, not only to teach these things how to act human, but to see what our reaction is to them. We're part of the experiment, whether we realize it or not. We're there, we're the guinea pigs too, okay? And that's the way they look at us. And is that not good? No, that's not good at all. When you do people that way, that's bad. That's experimenting on people for all the wrong reasons. That is very disrespectful in my book. But the government does things like that, okay? That's what they're up to, and they're doing that. And that's what I got to wonder about when you see these things happen in public like that, People doing it, all of a sudden they start this robotic-looking kind of movements, and they zone out, I call it. They act like, they're somewhere else and not where they're supposed to be. They zone out. If this is not a normal human reaction, my friends. This is something other than human going on here, Now, robots are getting so good. They're getting so good with these robots, it's hard to tell them from living things anymore. They can breathe. Yeah, they can breathe. They can blink their eyes, their head. You'd have to be very astute and watch them very closely to pick up on that being a human or not, even if you didn't have the feeling. And that's what I'm talking about today. You need to go with that feeling if you get that feeling, because it's telling you something, okay? Very important. You need to listen to it. That's what we have a word for it. It's called discernment. You're discerning something here, okay? So it's very important that you pay attention to that. But what if you can't do that? And this thing looks very human. Its eyes are blinking. Even they have a warmth to them. You can touch them and they feel human. Okay? Think about that a moment. This is freaky stuff. But you got to remember what you're dealing with. They are people, I think it's in Japan, Shanty, where you can buy sex bots. And you can have relationships with these robots. And people are getting attached to these robots and having actual relationships. But you know what? You got to step back a minute and say, hold on a minute. This is not a human relationship. This is a relationship with a human and a machine. They're losing sight of what's really going on here. And that's dangerous too. Think about the moralistic aspects of it. And the emotional impacts on this. And not only that, but the psychological implications of it. It's staggering. And it's not good because you're not dealing with another human being. You're dealing with a machine made to look like a human being. So are you living a deception? Are you really being true to yourself? When you're in that kind of a situation? No, you're not. You're deceiving yourself into believing something that's not true. It's a fantasy, And they buy these They buy these things for sick purposes too, because a lot of people have these rape fantasies that they carry out with these robots. All these different things, this S&M stuff that they're doing with these robots. It is freaky stuff, but this is real stuff going on, folks. I'm not making this up. You can do this if you got enough money. You can do it. Yeah, they have them for sale, so that you can get in touch with the more evil, darker, baser aspects of your being by doing these things you want to do to these robots. But there's a lesson in that. What happens one day? Listen to this very closely. If they're learning, these robots are learning, and they're learning, and they have a capacity to take all this in, then one day they're going to say, "Hey, I'm not going to let you abuse me anymore. Or I'm not going to take that from you anymore. I'm a robot. I got rights too." Okay. And what if they rebel on us? What if they say, "Hey, enough is enough. We're going to stop this stuff." And they're going to violate the prime directive. What is the prime directive of robotics? You shall not harm in any way human life. What if they violate that perception? That's not going to be good. When that day happens, you're going to have like the Terminator movies, okay? You're going to have the robots rise up. What if they rise up one day and say, "Hey, we don't need you human beings anymore. We're smarter, we're faster, we're better, we're stronger, we'll live forever, and you don't. So we're going to get rid of you." That could happen. That could be our future. If this gets out of hand to the point where I think it may, and you're going to start seeing more and more, my friends, this is your future. You're going to see the robots in McDonald's very soon. I'm not kidding. They're talking about replacing bartenders right now in a lot of the bars because you don't have to pay robots. The list goes on and on. Robotics is your future. Whether you want it or not, it's coming. And you're going to have to deal with robots. You're going to have to live with them. You're going to have to interact with them. You're going to have to connect with them somehow or another. Okay? And we've got robot cars now. You can get in a car in Los Angeles or downtown San Francisco and tell it where to go, and it will take you there without a driver. That's your future. Robotics are going to be everywhere because they're going to be our slaves. Do you understand? Mankind is always looking for slaves. That's in our history. Go back and look. I'm not making this up. We got to have slaves no matter where we find them or what we do to them. Okay? Whoever they may be or whatever they may be. Okay? To a certain extent, our animals and our pets are sort of like our slaves to a certain extent. They're there for our pleasure. They're there for our, although there are working animals like, sheepdogs and they do stuff like that and hunting dogs. But think about it. They're sort of like quasi-slaves in a way. They do what we want them to do. They go to take a walk. They even go potty when we tell them to. Whatever the situation, they are sort of under slave rule, you might say. But think about the perfect slave is a robot. Think about it. Government knows this. They're not only perfect slaves, they're perfect soldiers. Okay? And, we talked about in the past the Secret Soldier Project, paperclip and all that stuff. This is it right here. This is the combination of that. Zombie clones and robots are the future of the military. We've already got them working. They're called drones. They fly. And we have drones that swim in the ocean. And we have drones that walk on the land. Those robot dogs I talked about earlier. I've seen them in combat situations with those. I would not want to go up against them. No. Those dogs come after you with those machine guns on their back. You ain't got much of a chance, buddy. That's it. It's going to be over for you. Unless you got robots with machine guns on their backs to fight them with. This is the future, my friends. Robotics is here and now, not tomorrow, not maybe a few weeks. It's here and now. And it's just getting started. Elon Musk talked about who's about to become the world's only trillionaire. Okay, very soon. He's going to be the world's only first trillionaire, believe it or not. It's talked about chips, implanting chips in people that let them see. Blind people will see again. Paralyzed people will walk again. But at what price? Okay, we know that all these things require a price. Is it the price of your humanity to a certain extent? You got to wonder about that. Because when do you quit being human and you become part of the technology? That is our future too. And this is the scary part. This is what really bothers me, Shanty. The plans that they have for us does not stop with just making robots and clones. Okay, it does. That's just where it starts. The future they have for us is to assimilate us into the technology. We will become the technology. Yeah. Yeah.
What was that? What was that movie a couple of years back? Was it RoboCop? I think. This was
RoboCop.
A good 3 decades ago, where the police officer was killed, but they used his workable body parts and turned him into half robot, half human. So we've already been programmed with this for a very long time. You know, we just look at how many sci-fi movies and things are out there and have been for the longest time. That's all part of the human programming. You know, this whole transhumanism, transgenderism thing, that's been going on for the longest time. You know, I think what's interesting for me, Dennis, is that this is not just happening now. As you say, these guys they are so far ahead in their technology. And, you know, so they will only show us that which we can, like breadcrumb us, basically. Oh, you have this, you have that, you know, and then now suddenly technology and AI is growing in leaps and bounds. And I think, you know, spiritually, this is where we as humans stand at a crossroad as well. I mean, I think this is part of choosing heaven or hell, if you want to look at it that literally, right? Where if you have lost your soul, if you've chosen to disconnect, in other words, use everything that is AI, not be in nature, not do the shadow work you're meant to be doing, not connect to spirit, to God, your creator, you're going to be probably caught up in that world. I do believe in different timelines. And I also believe there's a very different timeline available for us as well. For those of us who have chosen to remain sentient, to remain conscious, to remain human, basically. And you know that for me, there's a fine line between being a human being that uses AI. For me, AI is a wonderful tool. It is a brilliant tool to do research. If I need it's like Google on steroids, okay? In that way, it's very good at refining language, and it's very good at pattern recognition. So for me, that's what I find good. And I always remain in charge. When I'm using stuff like that, I will always remain in charge. So we use it as a tool. If we as humans can maintain using any kind of technology as a tool, because we ourselves are God's sacred technology. Our souls are created from God's sacred technology, if you want to call it that. You know, they've really duplicated what they can in the human soul and therefore exploited it, weaponized it, studied it, abused it, tortured it, done whatever they can. But if we remain sovereign and we stay connected to that which is human, spiritual, emotional, physical, and continue like a tree, you remain rooted. You remain rooted into the ground, no matter how many storms there are, right? Your leaves might blow, your hairdo might get a little bit whacked out, but your roots remain completely connected and solid in that which you know to be true, which is God, creator, creation. We are human beings. There's a reason we're being targeted. And, I must also say to everyone, each and every one of us that is here has a sacred contract or an agreement with God the divine to be here at this time and experience what this world is about right now. The choice always remains ours as to how we're going to navigate that. So do we navigate it with AI, cell phones, everything that is quick and easy and soulless, because that's the trap? Or do we actually sit, do the hard work, face the shadow, look at our inner being, see where we ourselves are these amazing, amazing replicas of God? And when we tap into that, the AI has got nothing on us, that's for sure. They can't touch us. Then you smell it, you know it, it can't even come close to you. That's my experience of these things. So yeah, they have been prepping us for a long time, and it's up to us to realize that we are being prepped. It's up to us to realize we're being duped and we're being fooled. And it's up to us to understand and align with truth, God's truth. Because when you align with God's truth, nothing can touch you. No matter how ugly, no matter how big, no matter how heavy, you become invisible to it.
Well, that's very true, and we've talked about that before. Dark science. Science never factors in the spiritual aspects of things because they do not believe in that. They say, oh, we can't weigh it, we can't put it in a test tube, we can't see it with a microscope. We don't believe it exists. But it is real. It is a real factor in this universe around us, but they refuse to acknowledge that. They ignore it, And this is what impedes our true science. Okay, it keeps us from being what we are, 100% what we should be, and we lose the real true soul of science this way, because it doesn't recognize it even has a soul, and that's the bad part about it, And that's what we've got to be very careful about in the future, especially when it comes to robotics and stuff. And like I said, they have a way to inject things into you to make you part of the antenna array. They make you part of the Wi-Fi system. They're going to take more and more of your humanity away from you if you're not careful and you don't guard your humanity. Yeah, you're going to lose it. And when you lose your humanity, you lose your soul. That's it. That's what makes you human.
That's what, and I do believe that's also what the negative agenda is. It's literally, I mean, we know about the loosh harvesting. We know how this stuff works with these guys creating fear. I mean, look at wars. Because what happens when people start wars or they create wars? It's the trauma of the war is exactly what captures the souls of the people that are dying when you're just bombing random cities. So that's how they trap those souls, is through trauma. War is the oldest tool in the history of this planet that keeps human souls captive. So we have to learn, when we choose to not engage in that kind of violence, any kind of violence, and again, war is just a facet of violence. How much violence do we perpetuate against other species? Hunting, killing, slaughtering. We as humans seem, and it's true what you're saying, our pets are almost like our slaves. I agree with you, unless you're a cat mother. You know damn well that right, that I ain't that those cats ain't my slaves. I'm definitely their slaves, that's for sure. But it's true what you say. We like that. And then we have the same with animals and other life species. We perceive ourselves to have dominion over everything else. We control it by killing it if we don't like it, or if we don't approve, or if we feel we have a reason to defend ourselves, we just kill it. So, we cannot expect that we continue our violence against other species and expect the lizards to stop their violence against us. We live in a mirror universe. The minute And I say this a million times, and I cannot say this enough times because people don't seem to understand how important this is. If we continue to eat their babies, they continue to eat our babies. Understand, we're not dealing with humans. This is not humans who are consuming human babies and cannibalism, right?
Mm.
And
Oh
we
yeah,
have to understand that we need to look at our actions towards nature, the universe, each other, other life forms. We have to stop being violent in our own being. We might not be going to war and firing guns and dropping bombs, but oh boy, every time we decide to exterminate the pest that I don't like in the garden, what are we doing? We've got to learn how to connect with nature and communicate with these things, because then that you don't actually need to exterminate anything.
And you know, our battle is not just a battle against inhumanity. It is a battle against the weapon that they use against us, the weapon of fear, the intimidation of fear and violence and all that. They use this weapon very much against us. Okay, and it's not only what the government uses; it's the very society itself creates a lot of this fear. You have fear of your neighbors, what they may do to you, or the bully down the street, or whatever. You know, you don't know when you leave home if you're coming back. You're ever going to come back home again? You don't know anymore. You've got a very big thing of uncertainty going on here, and it is a factor of fear, whether it's caused by the government or caused by society or whatever the situation is. We have to battle fear. We got to battle fear and not succumb to it.
I think the fear, you see, these guys are experts at understanding human emotion and dissecting that. So battling fear is counterproductive. Fear is false evidence appearing real. So when we understand it's our own fears that are manifested in the world around us, we have created this playground for the predators to exist. It's our fear they're after. And every time they give us a jab or of fear or something, we're up in arms. Oh, I love it. They have learned how we respond. So we have to also take responsibility for what we're putting out there. If we're going to be angry and fearful, and I mean, the amount of trolls, the troll patrol that happens on these platforms is on another level. I mean, people who consider themselves to be Christians, yet sit in a gaggle of witches in little chat rooms, gossiping and saying the most horrific things about other people. I mean, how do you not see that you are the problem when you are doing that? There's so much blindness, Dennis, in these communities. You think you're doing well, but meanwhile, all you're doing is spewing venom about others. It tells me so much about your own unhealed wounds. And someone was saying, I think it was Juliet, we are violent towards ourselves. And when we learn to love ourselves and learn to sit with ourselves and take care of our own needs, we will never be in that kind of fear again. We will never be able to be led astray and deceived. It's in the heart. When we love ourselves and our environment, our creator, fear cannot touch us. Love is the answer, and love is not weak. And it's true, yes, we need to heal the heart, our own hearts. So when we stop spewing fear, when we stop participating in fear-related activities or conversations or engagements, of course, observe it. We live in a fear-driven society. How can we not observe it? The question is, do we engage in it?
We need to. I think we need to learn to control. I think we need to learn to control our baser emotions sometimes. You know, jealousy, hate, fear, whatever that base emotion is. We need to rise to a higher vibrational level above these emotions, control them more, sustain a higher emotional level for the good of society itself and for our own well-being. We need to do that, and we need to foster that, not only in ourselves, but in others as well. We need to get away from this negative stuff so much, that feeds on us, and we feed on it. Unfortunately, it is. I call it a negative perpetual motion machine. It keeps going around and around and around. We need to break that cycle. Yeah.
Well, look at what the politicians and the leaders of our countries all do. They feed our fears all the time. They create havoc and fear in human beings all the time. And why do we still abide by their laws? It's like the Stockholm syndrome. It's like you are glued, connected, stuck to your abuser. So at what point do we realize we don't need that type of abuse? It's like a woman deciding that her husband beating her up for the 100th time is not going to change. At some point, I need to leave the relationship. And same for a man, right? It's up to us to recognize we don't need what they are offering and have been offering. So how do we change that? We then become community orientated. We start growing our own food. We start connecting with our neighbors, with our town. We start homeschooling. If you're a teacher, you homeschool the community's kids, stuff like that. When we start taking action to dismantle the control, that's when then grid collapses, not in any other way.
I think also we need to, try to operate on a higher level of consciousness, a higher platform of emotion, and away from the baser instincts that we have, and embrace those more, and help others to embrace those more. That is better for all of society itself, if we get away from that, definitely. And I think, you're very right on that fact that, the powers that be use this fear as a weapon against us. They use these things for control on us. And that's what we need to get away from, the control in any way and impossible like that, because they are trying to control us. They're trying to control the narrative in every way. And who are they to do that? You got to stop and ask that question. Who are they to do that? They have no more right to do that than you and I do. But yet they violate that precept. Yeah.
Because they've managed, we've managed to forget who we are. That's why. As long as we've forgotten who we are, we will always believe the controllers. We will be controlled by organized religion. Look how they've used organized religion to control and abuse and enslave. All we have to do is listen to some of the testimonies of the SRA survivors. Religion is the key that they use to control and division. So the minute that organized religion, and I'm talking organized religion, I'm not talking about having a belief system that works for you. I'm talking about controlled religion. So we have that all over the planet, right? The biggest wars have been fought in the name of religion. A couple of 100 years ago, women like myself were being burnt at the stake with our children and thrown into boiling pots of water in the name of the Bible. People change the narrative when it suits them, and we've become confused. So when we really go back to that which is good and pure, which we know is you and God, and you and God are a team, right? And you co-create together, you have no doubt who you are. And then I can tell you, as I said earlier, I don't care how big or nasty or how many legions of revolting archons on their way to you, nothing will succeed. Nothing. That's the war. It's the spiritual war. Thing is, war is a word they've used to control us. So let's rather talk about, it's not a war we're in a spiritual release. We're releasing ourselves from the grips. And how do we do that? By raising our vibration. And if for those of you who are watching the stuff that I'm putting out on Solutions at the moment, the repatterning, this is exactly what we're talking about. we have been patterned biologically in a way that our nervous system braces when anything good comes along. And you learn to believe you are this faulty being. And when we unbelieve those stories, and when you repattern your nervous system, then everything starts going better. Everything starts changing. And we have to also realize we have that power within us. And it's God's power. It's not a big power. It's a humbling, radiant, energetic, healthy radiance where you just know I'm good. I don't care what anyone says, I'm good. Doesn't mean I always have a good day. Of course, we have to navigate the world, but we're good.
I'll leave about it today with one of my favorite sayings. It kind of goes along those same lines. Beyond the logic lies the truth. And that is very
Always.
true. Definitely. Yeah, always. And that points you the way. And there are, signs in our lives and in certain situations we need to pay more attention to. We need to wake up and see the signs and say, hey, I understand what this is or what that is. We need to be more astute in that and seek that out and make that part of our makeup to be that way. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But we need to watch out. We need to watch out for those robots, definitely, because robotics. Here's the thing about robotics, and like I said at the beginning of the show, it's all about power. Okay, power is a very addictive thing. These people are into the power trip, and like I said, we got to have slavery to a certain extent. Slavery still exists in this world to a great deal. A lot of people think, oh, it's been wiped out and it doesn't exist anymore. That's not true.
Yeah, the whole world is slavery.
Yeah, there are different forms of slavery too, And you are a slave to the system. There is a system, that you're a slave to from the cradle to the grave. You've got chains on you can't see, but they're there. And we need to kind of watch that too. We need to understand where our place is in all of this, just like you said earlier, and hook up with God to get these things done right, and to look at it from the correct point of view, to be able to see that logic and that truth that lies beyond it.
Exactly. You know what I find very interesting, as someone I'm a spiritual alchemist, right? Energy can never be created or destroyed, only ever transferred or transformed. So when we understand, how that works in spiritual terms, we see, for me, I see, and all these guys who are stealing power, who are trying to usurp things from other people, it's so amazing because they're just stealing from somebody else that which they already have anyway. They just haven't realized they have exactly what they want from someone else. So they're trying to, but they haven't realized it yet, subconsciously and consciously. So the pain of not knowing that you are a powerful being is of that nature that you're now going to turn that on someone else and steal and try and take from them the very thing that you feel you don't have. And that is sadly the irony, because the power they are stealing from kids and from old people and from animals and from other humans and from nature, whatever it is they're doing, we all have access to that when we align with the Holy Spirit. We all do.
True.
So you don't need to steal from anyone.
When you start becoming a power broker to a certain extent, you disrespect people. Eventually, that's what's going to happen. And we should all walk in respect with each other, not just each other, but our lives as well should be that way. And we should obtain that. We should seek that in our lives, and to walk with beauty and respect and consider other people. We're not just alone in this universe, in this world. There are other people we're interacting with, and it's like that old story about throwing a pebble in the pond. It makes a lot of ripples. It makes a lot of waves. And we got to understand that that's what's going on in the society in which we live, and we are part of that. But we need to also consider the respect of other people as well. And when I see
Exactly.
someone else, Shanty, I don't see them as just someone. I see them as another child of God. They deserve
Totally.
respect that everybody else has. Just same amount of respect to that. I don't think people should be playing favorites, and they should be respecting one person over another. It should be straight across the board, and that's the way you should look at it. And you respect other people and understand they're just like you, and you are just like them. Okay, in that respect, you're always both children of God. That's what you are. And you're made the same way. You have the same feelings. You feel lonely. You feel hungry. You feel cold. Whatever the situation is, the emotions are there. That's what makes us human. And we should never, ever lose sight of that, without a doubt. We should always stay connected to that.
Exactly. Exactly. You're a human being. Stay human. Dennis, thank you so much for joining me again. It's always fun chatting to you, and I look forward to having you back again in 2 weeks' time. And I want to say thank you to everybody who's joined us in the chats this evening. I always appreciate you guys and all your comments and feedback. And love having these conversations. And
Maybe
Asha.
maybe next time we will do the legends of the white gods. It's a fascinating subject.
Yes,
We'll have to get into
yes,
that.
yes, yes. Don't
Yeah.
forget, Dennis. Legends of
No,
the White Gods is on
the
next.
legends of the
That
white gods.
sounds nice. That sounds super duper interesting. Um, nice to know about all this
I love the
folklore.
mysteries of history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dennis, I'm sure if you had grandkids, you'd be the best grandpa ever. You could be telling kids so many stories. No, no, no. You're a wasted grandpa, Dennis. I hope you've got lots of kids who come to you and who you tell
Well, I've
stories to.
mentored a lot. I've had a lot of mentors on that. I
No, but
always,
you
uh, I
must
always
tell
like to
these
get, I
kids.
always like to get the kids together and tell stories. That's what I used to do. A
That's
lot of
it.
schools. Yeah, I used to do a lot of school presentations. I go around schools doing stories and everything. I love to connect with kids that way. You
You
kind
would
of open
be
their
my
imagination.
favorite
Yeah.
guy. You would be my favorite guy at school. I would demand the teachers had you in there at least once a week. That's really amazing, though, Dennis, that you do that. And I think that is such a gift because I love the idea that why not anymore? I mean, the kids would be delighted to hear these stories. And I think, especially in this day and age, right, Dennis? Dennis, I think so. I think so. You need to be telling the little kidlings what's going on.
Oh yeah, definitely. So campside fire stories. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should have everyone's kids, everyone in the chat who has kids and grandkids. We should do a session, campside fire stories for the kids with Dr. Dennis. I think that'll be pretty damn cool. I really do. So we'll talk about that, Dennis.
We'll have to look into that. Maybe definitely. I've
Maybe,
always,
definitely.
when I was a kid, I would go around the neighborhood and I would collect ghost stories. I was always great about ghost stories. And every family back in the day, every family had their own ghost story. I've collected them all up here. So, so I'll have to get them out one
Of
day.
course. We always have ghost stories. They're the best ones. They are the best ones. Like, ooh.
Yeah.
Okay,
Spooky
Dennis.
stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much. Always fun having you. Anything else you want to say in closing? Maybe where people can get hold of you? Want to just re-mention that again while I pop your website up?
Yeah, come over and visit me on my YouTube channel, Hunting the Shadows. And I was called the Podcast Agency. And I have two shows every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's called Hunting the Shadows. And then on Friday nights, at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I have a paranormal point of view. That's where we talk about all kinds of things that are paranormal and do book reviews and stuff like that. And I got to get your book on there and do a review on it one day. Definitely. And
Yay.
you visit me over there. And if you need to get in touch with me and you have any kind of paranormal problems, I have a paranormal consultation service. You can get in touch with me at DennisWCarroll.com. That's my website. And or if you just want to tell me a story or whatever, you might be in my next book. My books are available on Barnes and Noble and Amazon. Just look up the author, Dennis W. Carroll.
Thank you, Dennis. And we shall see you back in 2 weeks' time talking about Legends of the White Gods. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Sounds super intriguing.
We will put that down, definitely. All right.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Thank you, everybody. Always awesome to have you all in the chats, commenting, engaging. Like, share, subscribe. Get our algorithms up, please, everybody. And I will see you back tomorrow on Drop In with Shanti with the sequel to The Fall of the Cabal. And at 7 o'clock, which is 20 minutes earlier than now, wherever in the world you are. At 7 o'clock, Leo's the Gami. Look forward to seeing you then. Take care and be cool, be kind, and be yogi.